Hi there. Welcome to another episode of InspAyre. I'm your host, Jamila Kirwan. Today, we take you on the journey of the Government House restoration. Conveniently located in the midst of St. John's, the historic Government House stands as a symbol of Antigua and Barbuda's rich heritage and colonial past. But for years, one of its most iconic structures, the West Wing, remained in a state of disrepair. A once majestic space, it had become neglected, its deteriorating condition a stark contrast to the proud history it housed. Enter the Ayre Foundation, whose ambitious restoration project not only breathed new life into the West Wing, but turned a historic relic into a modern, thriving tourist attraction. Stay with us as we take you behind the scenes of this remarkable transformation, exploring how a partnership between the Ayre Foundation and local government helped preserve an important piece of history while creating a lasting legacy for both tourism and governance in this island paradise.
Welcome to CAF, where we spotlight stories of impact and hope. At the heart of Silang, Cavite in the Philippines, a new building is rising, one that promises to shape the future of hundreds of underprivileged students at the Sisters of Mary School. Thanks to a generous donation of $120,000 from the Ayre Foundation, a state-of-the-art digital transformation center is being built, equipping students with future-ready tech skills. And here's something special. One entire floor will be named in honor of tech entrepreneur and philanthropist Ayre, whose vision aligns with empowering youth through education and innovation. The project is part of Sports Cars for a Cause, where speed and style meet social impact. Ayre was there, saying that education is the one thing no one can ever take away. This building isn't just bricks and mortar. It's a launchpad for dreams. With every contribution, the Ayre Foundation drives futures forward, one student at a time.
Welcome back to InspAyre. Surviving fire, earthquakes, and hurricanes, Government House boasts a rich history which dates back as far as the early 19th century. At the turn of one of the greatest acts in history, it was at this very location that the emancipation of slavery in Antigua and Barbuda was said to have happened quietly. Such history had to be preserved and restored. And so, after a visit to the property by Ambassador Ayre, a new chapter began. The Ayre Foundation, known for its investments in Antigua and Barbuda, recognized a call to action and pledged its full financial support to the restoration of the West Wing.
It is important for any nation to preserve its historical sites, as these serve as the benchmark of the development of a nation and its people. Such preservation allows the children of the nation to acquire a full appreciation of the struggle of their forefathers, from slavery to emancipation in 1834, and from emancipation to independence in 1981. And I am sure this transformation will continue as the nation of Antigua and Barbuda proceeds along the path from infancy to maturity. At Ayre Foundation, we understand the importance of creating legacies, but equally important is preserving them and leaving behind a time capsule of sorts. For generations who will come after us, I personally believe that there are those of us who, due to our talents, resources, or influence, should assume responsibilities, however daunting, of leaving the world a little better than we found it. That is why I'm extremely happy and proud that my foundation was able to play such a major role in being the first significant benefactor for the restoration of the historic West Wing. Since 2005, Calvin Ayre Foundation's mission has been committed to social and sustainable development, rebuilding communities, enriching lives, particularly in the areas of emergency response, social development, and education and sports. So involvement in this project is a testament to my foundation's commitment to the preservation of history.
Built in the 1800s, Government House has served as the official residence of the Governor General, hosting dignitaries, royal emissaries, and the leaders of tomorrow. Now, I could sit here and give you a history lesson, but no one can tell the story better than Ann Jonas.
The story about this building goes all the way back to before slavery, when the enslaved people who actually, from all the evidence provided by the historians, actually lived in these spaces, and after emancipation, the spaces then were utilized by those who had to work as ancillary staff for the main house, for the lieutenant governors and the governors who would have lived here. In 2014, August 14th to be exact, Their Excellency Sir Rodney and Lady Williams took on the portfolio of the Governor General and the Governor General's Goodwill Emissary. On visiting Government House on this 2-acre property that has such historic value and tells the story of Antigua moving through several phases in our development. When they came to this property, they looked at the infrastructure, they looked at the grounds, and both decided that they would make it an important part of their work under their tenure to restore Government House. They wanted to ensure that this story was one which would be told for many, many more years to come.
Discover the Caribbean from a new perspective with Calvin Ayre helicopters. Call us today at 789-4354 or email reservations@calvinayre.com. Welcome back to InspAyre. At the official handover ceremony, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, Sir Rodney Williams, applauded the Calvin Ayre Foundation for its efforts in making this vision a reality.
The journey of Government House restoration, as we know it now, began sometime in 2014 when I took up the office of Governor General. And from cursory observation, it became clear to my wife and I that there was an urgent need to restore this 2-acre property to improve the environment within which we worked and welcomed visitors and also local people as well. Today I wish to say, Ambassador Calvin Ayre, you are to be highly commended for coming on board in such a major way to transform the ruins of the western side of this property in the very near future. We agreed that it was also very important to preserve part of our history so that present and future generations could have a historical laboratory for learning lessons from our challenging past and celebrating the triumphant achievements of those who were not satisfied with the status quo. Historical buildings such as Government House and the nearby St. John's Cathedral provide opportunities for us to study the past and make sense of the communities that came before us. There is still more to be done, and we are hopeful that others will follow the fine example of the Calvin Ayre Foundation, which has made the wise decision to invest in the preservation of one of the most important architectural symbols of Antigua and Barbuda, namely our government house.
The West Wing, I first noticed when I went downtown one day. I'm not usually a person who goes into town. Having been away for a while and coming back home, I looked across the road and said, what's that burnt out building? And to my surprise, it was Government House. And it was right opposite a building that looked quite attractive and that had been newly renovated. So it sort of looked out of place. And funnily enough, when I went into Government House for the first time, I had never been there before. And that was one of the first things I mentioned to my husband when he became Governor General. And we had the reception after you go into Parliament and that type of thing. You go to Government House for reception. We went in there and I said to my husband, what's that building? He said, I don't know, but it really doesn't suit, the environment. So we have to do something about it. And it was, I think, I can't say anything more than, it was just such a saving grace that Calvin Ayre came in and fixed. That was the first building he looked at and decided to fix. You can't see the main building from the street. You can see the West Wing from the street. So it's important that you fix the West Wing first. That's one of the reasons why it is important. Right now, we use it for Government House staff, so that those are the offices. Now that they're fixing the main building, the West Wing is where all the staff is located. So you have the bathrooms even there. And you have the offices. All the offices are there, including the Halo office. And Halo, will soon be opening a souvenir shop. All of that is in the West Wing that Calvin Ayre fixed. The upstairs that was actually burnt, they have fixed it up quite nicely, and probably be a small restaurant, somewhere to eat after work, kick your heels off. The rest of it will be museum space. So you have, for example, that old chimney that they fixed, they renovated, propped up, and they will have like a reconstruction of a woman baking bread by the chimney and that type of thing. So all of that all along there will be museum space. And then you have in the wing that Calvin Ayre built, that massive, we call it the 100-meter room. And so that's how we're going to use this space. What I'm always thinking when I get in there is how lovely the brick is. It's lovely and clean, and it contrasts against the wooden building. And so I think it makes a nice, aesthetically, it makes a nice contrast. And anybody who is going in there and is interested in architecture, I think will notice, the loveliness of the environment.
And what did the West Wing buildings look like at that time? I'm standing on the lower level, the stone building. The upper level would have been wooden. Unfortunately, in 2014, it was a set of burned timbers that stood out for all those who would pass by as a very sad story of the burning of a historic building, which unfortunately wiped out many documents that were important to Antigua and Barbuda's history. That was not only the picture that we could see in 2014 on this set of buildings that we call the West Range buildings. On my right, we had basically sticking out of the ground pieces of brick and wall, that some of which were covered with concrete, all the way down to the other side of the property. And if you look now, you would never imagine what the state of affairs was when in 2014, Mr. Ayre came by, he did a tour, and he said, I will take on this commitment. The work began with the Heritage Trust of Antigua and Barbuda, Inc. And at that time, we had a board that was comprised of a number of individuals, including His Excellency as the President. We had Sir Martin Franklin, we had Sir Mark Moody Stewart, High Commissioner Karen May Hill. We also had Mr. Philip Davies. That board was given by the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda the authority to manage the Government House Restoration Project. And so with the resources that were provided by the Calvin Ayre Foundation and his team, and with the Challengers Enterprises being the contractor who would have won the bid, we then took on this project.
I am Vernon Challenger of Challengers Enterprises Limited, a full construction outfit. In our remit, we have a woodwork factory, heavy equipment such as excavators, backhoes, and the whole works, concrete trucks. We also have a planning department where we have architects, engineers, and quantity surveyors, and much more. Challengers Enterprises was awarded the bid to partner with the CAF Foundation on the Government House Restoration Project. It wasn't our first project with the CAF Foundation. We've done a few others, but this one was of the most significance, bearing the history behind this project. So restoration is not renovation. So when I say restoration, I mean we have to replicate it as it was back in the day. So it meant digging deep, finding materials and the resources to match what exists. One of our major challenges with that project was the chimney. We're not accustomed to building chimneys in these parts of the world, but there was a chimney existing and we had to replicate that. So that was one of our biggest challenges that we face, and also finding the right type of bricks to match what existed. Working on the Government House restoration was more than being awarded a contract. It was the chance to contribute to a national initiative and to work with a fantastic and committed team of individuals. We are extremely proud and will continue to support wherever and however we can.
I am Ayre Goodwin Michael. I'm an architect. I was involved with this restoration here of the Government House West Wing. I worked along with Philip Logan, an American architect who specializes in restoration, and this is my first restoration project. I was very happy to be involved in this project because I have always been interested in restoration work. I love historical buildings. I believe in preserving historical buildings. I believe in preserving the Government House. So I was very happy to be involved. I was not familiar with the West Wing area before I started the work, per se, as in I only would have seen it passing by on the outside from the street. So to be involved, I really got to learn a lot about the building and the history of the building. It is, obviously the whole aim of restoration is to preserve as much as possible the original makeup of the building. So the whole idea, was to restore the stonework as much as possible, the brickwork, rebuild it in a way that would reflect what was here before. So we redid the wooden areas. So a key person within this whole construction, Patrice Francis, she was a local engineer along with Evan Zachariah, and we worked along together as well with the structural elements. She was here every day, making sure, double checking, with the foundation and all the woodwork and all the structural elements to make sure, it was all, done in a very safe and, strong manner, And of course we had the local contractor, Vernon Challenger with Challengers, his whole construction group, very skilled workers. You know, they did really a lot of skilled work with, especially when it comes to refurbishing the windows, because we have the old time windows and it has the double hung sash sort of way it operates. So they had to restore the old windows, and then we also put in some, you know, new windows and doors, and his workshop would have made them, you know, they're very skilled joiners, and they would have made these windows that we needed and done very fine woodwork. So we had a very good, you know, top class product. Yeah, I think it all came together quite nicely. I am very satisfied as to how it turned out in the end. It's a great piece of work, and I think we can all be proud of the end piece.
This journey of discovery, preservation, and rebuilding, it has been an international team effort from the beginning. When we first defined our common goals with their excellencies in 2015, not only for your island nation, but for the world to understand and enjoy. Working with our island counterparts, and the West Wing is the first phase of this journey and represents a clear example of preservation and transition to new possibilities. You will find two documents that were given to you when you came in. One provides a summary of relevant histories of Government House in general, along with a very detailed report by a renowned archaeologist, historian, and architect, Ed Chappell, who was actually the head of Colonial Williamsburg for 35 years. And he came and did very extensive archaeological investigations, not only of the main building, but of the West Wing. And he was especially interested in the discovery of what existed in the West Wing.
This story is now a different story because of the collaborative efforts of a number of donors, and particularly who started the ball rolling in a major way, none other than the Calvin Foundation. Other donors have also come on board, and their story will also be told when we hope to reopen next year, when Government House will be available to the general public, to visitors, telling the story of Antigua's history, a triumphant history from challenges to triumph. And as we continue to pave the path, we encourage all Antiguans and Barbudans on island and in the diaspora to be a part of our nation's story, whether it's a challenging story, a triumphant story, or a regular story. We all have a part to play in our nation's development.
Thanks to the efforts of the Ayre Foundation, this historic building is no longer just a monument to the past, but a thriving center that honors the nation's heritage, supports its leadership, and invites visitors to step into a story that has shaped the island's identity. This treasured landmark will continue to serve the people of Antigua and Barbuda both as a place of governance and as a vibrant cultural attraction. As we look to the future, we are reminded that the past, when carefully preserved, can continue to inspire progress and unity. Thank you for joining us for another episode of InspAyre. I'm Jamila Kerwan.